What's up, you beauties? Welcome to High and Wide Hockey YouTube channel, episode 21 of season 7. I'm your host, Jim Iacovone, joined as always by the one and only Jack Smith. And if you're catching us live on YouTube, make sure to smash the subscribe button. Help us on our quest to 1,000 followers. Make sure to hit the alert so you never miss a show. And for all the podcast listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcast or Spotify so you're first in line when newest episodes drop. You can also check out our site, hwhockey.net. So the Flyers are on a slight road trip until they come home this weekend to face the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think they do have a game Thursday also, but they're on the road. They got shut out for the third time in a row against the Colorado Avalanche. And they play, I believe it's tomorrow night, against the Utah Hockey Club. Apparently we'll have a new name soon, Jack. But while they're on the road, speaking of road trips, can you tell us about Phans of Philly real quick?
Don't mind if I do, Jim. Flyers fans, we've got something special for you today. Looking to take your game day experience to the next level? Then look no further than Phans of Philly. With over 14 years of experience, they're the go-to team for putting together an unforgettable travel package for the die-hard Philly sports fan. Why Phans of Philly, you ask? Let's break it down. These guys have spent years building the best relationship with bars, hotels, the team's transportation, you name it. Every trip they plan gets better and better. And trust me, they'll make sure your experience is top-notch. Whether it's scouting out the perfect hotel, finding the hottest nightlife, or securing the best seats in the arena, Phans of Philly has it all figured out. They know how to make your next trip an absolute blast. So head on over to fansofphilly.com. That's fansofphilly.com and book your next Flyers road trip today.
Outstanding stuff. They're doing a lot of stuff with the Super Bowl as well. So it's Super Bowl week if you're a football fan, if you're an Eagles fan. So you guys make sure you head over to PHANS of Philly, fansofphilly.com. They have all your Super Bowl travel wants and needs. But back to hockey a little bit here. A big week for the Flyers, for Flyers fans who have been clamoring, begging for any sort of move and trade. They got their wish. Thursday night, Jack, the Flyers had a home game, and it was almost another in-game trade. You got a compliment here from Dave. I got to put that up on the screen real quick because that almost made me laugh.
That's what I'm talking about.
But a big deal. And it's funny. Like, I hate to compare things to the way that they used to be, because for Flyers fans today, fans of this team or of the last decade, this is a big trade. You know, trading players who have been here for their entire careers that the Flyers have drafted in the first round in Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. And, I want to talk about those two players specifically at some point. But first, Jack, I want to get your take on the trade and kind of how things went down from your point of view and perspective.
Crazy thing for me is we were just going back and forth last episode about how it'd be nice, really nice, if they did something this offseason or this trade deadline, but they don't have to. And the main player we were talking about was obviously Ristolainen, with Lawton kind of lingering in the background. As long as one of those two deals got done, if not both, I think most of the fan base would be happy. And not even, a couple days later, this bombshell gets dropped. Morgan Frost, who just felt like he's perennially here in flux, like that's going to be his career. I was tweeting, what's his next contract going to look like? 1 year prove it deal. Book it. Like, I was that confident, like that's happening. And he goes in this deal. Mind you, Flyers don't even get a center back. That's interesting. And Farabee, who we always threw into trade deals, but I guess it comes down to, and I think the Flyers fans are doing this now, we overvalue our own players. It just is fact. Most teams do, but this is a perfect example of the Flyers fans doing it. Nobody's really too happy with the return. I don't think it was anybody got fleeced by anything like that. I just think that the perceived value of Farabee and Frost, and I didn't think Frost really had any value. I thought Farabee had some. This doesn't seem to look like that. And it was a unexpected return. I just remember the details of the trade coming out. Kuzmenko was the first thing dropped. For a while there, we thought we were getting a first and another prospect. Peltier's name became official. But on the other end of that, we weren't sure if it was Frost or Farabee. Frost was the initial, he's not returning to the bench. Oh, wait, it might be an injury. It looks like it's Farabee. Boom, it's both. And yeah, we get back Kuzmenko, who obviously 39 goals his rookie year, and even last year was on pace to kill it, but rough season this year. Peltier, who I thought he was a little bit younger than he was. Turns out he's not. So he's also kind of like let's see what we have here. And, I'm not going to hate on the draft picks, but to see two cornerstones in the sense that they've been here for so long, one of which being a center, which we just flat out need to ice a team, and he's the skilled one you would think would play with your first and second line most of the time. But it's moving on from an era. It really is. I mean, we started the season with Frost. What if he pots 60-something, 70-something points playing with Michkov? Jesus, what a different lifetime that was. And boom, just like that, him and Farabee going in one foul swoop. It was definitely unexpected, but things are moving. There's life. There is life in the front office. Love it or hate it, people are kind of backing away. It's like, okay, Danny's doing something. So they're just happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot. Trying to gather some thoughts here. So, all right. So let's talk the return. Let's kind of take this in chunks here. Let's talk the return. Or you know what? Let's start out with, some people were disappointed with the return, and let's kind of talk about why. So early in the season, it was pretty much known league wide, or in certain circles, that there wasn't a lot of interest in acquiring Morgan Frost for anything more than a third round pick, fourth round pick, right? That was the pretty much general consensus around the league. Flyers were shopping him. Teams, weren't going to pony up anything of value for him. Same kind of thing with Farabee. The Flyers were shopping Farabee. He was mentioned in Minnesota Wild rumors. The Wild were kicking the tires on Farabee for a while there. And then it ended up coming out. Teams didn't want to trade for Farabee without the Flyers retaining salary. And so this deal comes along where I'm going to assume the Flames saw Morgan Frost maybe heating up a little bit, and the Flames are kind of in the playoff. They're in the thick of a playoff hunt in the Western Conference, and they could use a guy down the middle. And from what I read, their GM thinks that Joel Farabee could grow into a Blake Coleman type player, and maybe he can. That's great, but the move, I thought, made a lot of sense for the Flyers. I think we've known for a while that Morgan Frost wasn't going to work out here. Sure, he was a player that had skill, and there was just a lot of negatives that would follow up some of that. That, in my opinion, negated the positives. And maybe he'll grow and flourish somewhere else, but it didn't seem like it was ever going to happen here. And he's just here for too long. He kind of overstayed his welcome, for my opinion. Joel Farabee signed what could have been a pretty good contract if he lived up to any sort of potential. He had 50 points last year. I think Flyers fans were expecting that sort of year in and year out. 50 points as sort of, he had the potential to be a 50, 60 point guy, maybe 20 goals, 40 assists, 25 goals, 35 assists, something like that. A really solid, maybe second line player. Joel Farabee just could never live up to it. I know he had the neck injury that maybe set him back a year. You could use COVID as well if you want. I think everyone kind of lived through that. So to say it hurt his development and nobody else's, I think would be unfair, because guys developed. So anyways, he signed that contract. Hasn't lived up to the potential. Flyers found a team that was willing to take on, his entire contract, and that opened up some things for the Flyers for the next, I think he's signed for the next 3 years, not including this year. So that ends up being 4. So the Flyers have some money to play with. We'll definitely talk about that in a second. And then the return, Jack. Kuzmenko for me, and I'm curious to hear more what you think. Kuzmenko for me is a translator for Michkov. And, okay, the guy scored some goals. He was almost a point per game player in 29 games with the Flames last year, something like that. Shooting percentage, very high. in the 2 years where he scored a lot of goals. So not sure if it's luck or, he's playing with guys that are finding him in the right spots kind of thing. From what I read, this is not a guy that's going to be consistently good 5-on-5. From what I was reading up on was he kind of, and I don't know if he does it intentionally, but he sort of picks and chooses when he wants to get in on the forecheck. And, playing for a guy like Tocchet in Vancouver, that didn't necessarily work out. And then you're playing for a guy like Torts for a few months here. I don't know if that's the kind of player the Flyers necessarily want, but maybe he'll hop out on a power play and maybe he can chip in with, helping Michkov get acclimated to some things here. The two parts that I'm excited for in the return, Peltier, number one. I think like Frost and Farabee, this was a kid that could use a change of scenery. From what I've heard, the kid has personality. He's got a little fire to him. On the smaller side, obviously, he's listed 5'9", which from my experience usually means he's shorter than 5'9". Maybe they bumped him up an inch or two. But we'll see. We'll see what he does with the Flyers. He's got a clean slate, a new opportunity to prove himself here to new coaches and new fans, new media. So I'm excited to see how a player like Peltier will take on his new opportunity here. And then obviously the second round pick. It adds now the Flyers have 7 picks in the first 2 rounds of this summer's draft. And you combine seven picks in the first 2 rounds with now a lot of cap space that's going to be opening up, not just this offseason, but like we talked about the last episode, as this dead cap starts coming off the books, you add $5 million to that now that we weren't expecting to open up there. I think maybe if it opened up, we thought it was going to be an Aristo trade, and we'll talk about Risto in a little bit as well. But I think now, like, we've kind of been on here trying to tell people, hey, there's a plan in place. We just have to wait, unfortunately. Now, does this trade speed things up, do you think, Jack? Because now they have the extra $5 million in cap. Is that because they have a plan to potentially fill that up? Or is it more so still, let's wait and see? What do you think?
I think it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I think it's a little bit of both. They had their eye on somebody. I'm not sure who that is, unless it's Pettersson. But from what I understand, they're still going to try to work things out there, at least this season. So he's got some kind of plan, or maybe he just wants it to be free for when something potentially pops up, which is also nice too. And a part of the trade that's being definitely overlooked, as it's clear. What's not clear is who and when he's going to go for it. But also, you mentioned 7. First off, you forgot about the 7th round 2028 pick too.
Yeah.
I mean, because the trade was so close, you just needed that little extra to get you over. But 7 picks in the same draft, like, do we realistically see them making every single pick with all those? Like,
no. It's
possible, but where they're at and the money they just freed up, come on. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Something has to go terribly, terribly wrong. So that gives me hope that Keith Jones has been pretty much talked about as this guy who knows everybody in the league and knows all these things. And that's why he's going to make life easier on Briere, who's a new GM and even kind of knew the front office in retrospect to some of these other guys, and his connections and whatnot are going to, so maybe they know something that the rest of us don't. Maybe there's a few things about certain players coming out that they think they can get in on and be a part of, and the rest of us don't. But also looking further down the line, some Farabee's contract wasn't just for next year; it was for the following, and I believe the one after that as well. There's a couple of free agents coming. I think 2026 is supposed to be crazy, free agent wise, potentially. But also, there's a lot of talk of this offseason of oh my God, I blanked on what the damn thing was. Well, you sign a guy from another team and he's still a restricted free agent. Offer sheet. Why the hell couldn't I think of that? So obviously that does not, very rare that these are used. Teams are almost afraid of them, but sometimes the looming threat of one leads to a trade, kind of like when we were talking about Shea Weber back in the day, perfect example, before they signed him to the offer sheet, which, yes, they wanted him, but also wanted to keep him away from the Rangers. There was like an idea, and I think they did this with Renberg when they grabbed him in the 90s as well. They traded players back, that to make up for the picks that were going. So, you're going to have a lot of picks to lose some of your own, because when you sign an offer sheet, it's only your own picks. You can't include anybody else's pick in there. But, it just seems like they're gearing up to potentially be in from any scenario. And also, like, how else are they going to rebuild this team? They're going to have to draft, have plenty of draft picks, make big trades. They have plenty of ammunition to go and do that. And they have money now for the free agency whenever that comes along. And reclamation projects, which they just acquired 2 players who kind of fit that bill. That you have to attack this from all angles. And it seems like they're actually doing that. It's obviously step one, but it's a big step one. You can see, like, wow, they have everything you would need to make something happen. It's when do they make it happen and who do they make it happen with? But you got to believe they have the inside track here. They must know something, and there's a lot coming up.
Hey, at the very least, you can't say that they're not doing anything. You can't say that there's not a plan. You can't say that they're not preparing for anything, right? Like, Briere's even coming out and saying it now. We're looking for a top center. We're preparing to go out and find a top center. It's almost every time he's in the media now.
Wasn't
top
that great?
Center is top priority. This is what we're looking for.
It's only all the crap we've been saying for how long now. But it was nice to see he make the big trade like that. And just like that, he's in the press box, like, answering questions. Like, I appreciate that. And that's what he said. He made it as clear as day. Like, we're trying to acquire a number 1 center. We understand the assignment. We know what our roster buildup is and what our needs are and what's perceived to be out there and how hard it is to get it. It is night and day different from the presser he had a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even less than a couple of weeks ago, where we're breaking down everything he's saying. And he's saying things like, well, it's really tough to get a center. They're not really available. And everybody was pissed off and all that stuff. And like we said, take it with a grain of salt. And sure enough, look, he's already making room. Look, I understand he didn't acquire the big center yet, but my God, is he loading up to potentially do something there? So part of me is just happy this happened, because it can just calm people down, for Christ's sakes. Like, Twitter melts down faster than Chernobyl. I swear to God, it's out of control. And so it makes me feel like we're in a good place. You know what I mean? We're not neglecting obvious needs and preaching patience. And honestly, it really felt like for a hot second, if I were to side with the detractors of Briere, like, they're just going to draft their way out of this, and it's not going to work, and it's good to see that that's really not the only way they're thinking about doing this.
No, they really are attacking it from all angles. Like, they're not just putting all their eggs in one basket. It's they need the cap. If they somehow strike out, because trades aren't guaranteed, right? You need a suitor. You need a team willing to move a top center for whatever you got. If that's not a possibility, well, we're going to have cap to sign one of the big guns when the time comes, and in the meantime, we're developing a guy like Luchenko. Maybe they're drafting some guys like the players mentioned from CMZ here. I don't know if they land any of these. We'll talk about this at some point in the show, I'm sure, as well, because Flyers are not exactly a playoff type roster, even I think a playoff competing roster after that move. So I would like to talk about the Flyers potentially sliding down into the top 5 or 6, and maybe they get some luck. So that's a good point by CMZ. But hey, in the last 2 years, Briere has made 2 pretty big shake-up trades. And I know Gauthier was not on the roster, but he acquired a 23-year-old player in Jamie Drysdale with a lot of upside, a guy that's, starting to find himself a little bit here, right? But he's a player that you can, I would consider Drysdale an addition to what the Flyers are trying to build, this whole rebuild type thing. He's not a guy that's going to put you over the top. So he's a rebuild type player. This season, I don't know what Peltier is going to be, but he's an RFA. This is a guy that might stick around for a little bit. He added another 23-year-old young player to the roster while adding a second-round pick. And while I might not be the highest person on a player like Andrei Kuzmenko, maybe he does find, a scoring touch here again, and they give him a contract. This is a player that they could also flip at next year's deadline. Or, I mean, who knows, this year's deadline. But this is a player that they could use. This is what rebuilding teams do. They find these reclamation project type guys, sign them to maybe a 1 or 2 year deal, and flip them to a contender, right? So they did it again. When you think about it like this, right? Remember the Provorov deal? He got picks, a prospect, and he got a player in Sean Walker that he ended up flipping for a first round pick. He did it again. He got the second round pick, got a young prospect, maybe change of scenery type player in Peltier, who Flyers fans I think are going to like because he does play with some snarl and some attitude. And Kuzmenko, I don't know what they're going to do with him. At the very least, he's going to help, you would assume, help Michkov a little bit more. They were teammates in the KHL. At the very most, maybe he maximizes his time here, gets a short contract. Flyers flip him. It's a great trade by Briere. It looks like the Flames won it on paper because they got the two maybe guaranteed roster players in Frost and Farabee, and it helps Calgary maybe push for the playoffs. But the move made a lot of sense for what the Flyers are trying to do, and that's rebuild. We've been saying that they're doing that, right? That's what they're doing.
Nobody's happier than me, Jim. I'm telling you.
Yeah. So, it's just the noise that just pops up when I don't know. That's what I'm talking to the people that want to jump down Briere's throat, right? Because they want him to do something. He's not fit for the job, this and that. He makes a move, and now everyone's like, "Oh, I knew he could do it. What a trade." You know what I mean? It's funny. It's like, "Oh, this is what I wanted all along, finally." Well, it's like,
I always had faith. I never doubted you. Like,
yeah, you were calling him an asshole 4 weeks ago. Just God forbid you have some patience.
Some of the people don't praise Briere. They just directed that hate to like Torts is just getting torched.
Like, that what's going on?
Oh God, dude. The team has 3 straight shutouts. Even though they have injuries and traded 2 guys.
These are the same people that want them to tank for bottom 5 picks too, complaining that they get shut out 3 times in a row.
Yes. The same people who hate Torts, even though he's a teacher, not an X's and O guy, but what do I know? Yeah. You saw what happened with Michkov. He cheats on a play, leads to a goal. So in that scenario, who's wrong? Michkov. He cheated. He wanted to go for the breakaway pass. It's tied 0-0. It's not like you got to score. It's 3-1 and you're losing. I mean, I like that he does that stuff. You just got to pick your time of the game to do that. Pick your times. And Torts tells him he fucked up. And they're 2 fiery people. So there's a little explosion on the bench. And then it was over. Not in Twitter world, it wasn't. Oh, my God, he's going to run back to Russia. He's never coming back. He's going to demand a trade. Get Torts. I can't stand this guy and everything. It's just out of control. Yeah. Just absolutely out of control. And, not all players are built like Cutter Gauthier, so relax.
Right, and well said with that because, if Michkov's everything that we think, getting yelled at by a coach, I mean, in another language, mind you, so he's not even understanding what the hell he's saying.
That's true.
It's going to ignite a fire in somebody like Michkov. He's going to want to do better, right? That's the kind of competitor that he is. The people that get angry when they see a coach yelling at a player are the ones that quit when that happens to them, right? Michkov won't quit. There are, believe it or not, some people like to be coached. And sometimes,
is that what that was? Is that what Torch was doing?
Believe it or not.
You mean he wasn't just being a dick for the sake of being a dick because he's the worst person ever? Wow, that's weird.
Yeah. No. Some people like to be coached. They like to be they like a little tough love, right? Look, I'll say it like this. It's when a coach isn't yelling or isn't talking to you that's when you got to worry. If a coach is in your ear, you're good because he expects better, right? Or he's telling you what you need to do because he wants to see you do better. When a coach is not talking to you, when he's ignoring you, when you're making mistakes and you know you're fucking up and your coach isn't saying nothing to you, that's when you got problems because he doesn't care, because he's done with you. He can't do anything else with you. So he's coaching a guy up like Michkov. And look, Michkov's he's not getting it, frankly, because there were habits that he had in the KHL they were occurring here in the beginning of the year, right? And then I think he was sat for a game or two, and he went on his little scoring run there. And quite frankly, he looks tired. And I don't. Maybe it's tougher to see on TV, but if you go to these games and you watch him, he's not the same player as he was even a month ago. And so if you ever played sports, if you were ever put through tough conditioning tests where your body is just, your mind is where it needs to be. Your mind knows where you need to be. Your mind knows what play is coming. Your body just can't do it. And then once your body starts to crash, then when you get really tired, your mind starts to go. And so you start falling into the same stupid mistakes that you were making in the beginning of the year. And for me, from what I see, that's kind of what's happening. There are plays along the wall where I'm expecting Michkov to get involved like he was earlier this year. And he's just he's a second or two late, or a second. It just looks like he's a little more hesitant. Maybe he doesn't want to take that hit along the wall, or you know what I mean? Like, you could just see he's a little mentally and physically tired. And so I'm just like, let's get to the Four Nations break. This guy needs he needs 2 weeks off for real. Like, he needs it,
Absolutely. I mean, he's a young player. He's not even supposed to be here yet. It's all bonus, if you ask me. And I'm not worried that it's his offensive instincts are going to be beaten out of him, and he's going to be scared to take chances. If Torts did that for him for the next 3.5 years or longer, but he's not going to be here.
Yeah.
Might not be here past this year, depending on who becomes available. So I'm not worried about that. I want to coach out bad habits.
Yep.
Like, Torts has always made players better. I mean, the ones who don't like Torts, they're not very good players. Compare the names who talk highly of Torts, you talk negatively, and tell me which side you'd rather have. And you see it and how successful he's been with pretty interesting teams. I didn't want to say bad, but we'll go with interesting and who he's beaten. And he's in a teaching mode right now. This is learning. I have no issue with this at all. I don't think it's too rough. It's freaking hockey. This isn't baseball or basketball. This is hockey. Like, I know Cutter scared the hell out of everybody, but Torts still needs to do his job. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's only Michkov." Well, I point to what Jim just said. And if he's coaching him up, there's a reason for that. You want him in your ear and showing you what you should and shouldn't be doing. Now, do I think he should pull off some of the benching? Yeah, a little bit. Got to get some offense going, some confidence going. But maybe we are just getting to that Four Nations tournament, and they are going to have to do something about goal scoring. But they're down a lot of players now too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the main focus is just stay on track. And if prospects or players or Michkov, they don't grow steady line, it's okay. No, it's not NHL. Like, guys have peaks and valleys. They have step backs. Take a step back, take 2 steps forward. It's all a learning process. And with how young he is, it's not that surprising. It's not the end of the world. He's a fiery player. He wants to win. Torts is also fiery. 2 fiery things usually lead to fireworks. It's not like the biggest thing in the world. Like, I'm not shocked that happened when you consider the two people involved. So take it easy.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. I think we want passion. It wasn't that long ago we had a guy like Dave Hackstall here. You remember? And we were just dying. Show any sort of emotion, passion on the bench, something.
Mr. Limp Noodle. Yeah, and his team could be getting destroyed, and he's arms crossed, just kind of looking out there, thinking about, I think I should make my bed later. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, I want that passion. I want that fire. And when things are going bad, do you really want somebody behind the bench just kind of staring off into the distance? Because I get mad. I like seeing the team win. I don't like seeing them get trounced. I like seeing them win. I want that passion.
Yep. Players, I think most players respect that.
Ones that give a shit do.
Like, they can tell, if like you said, if you have a limp dick coach, I mean, this is a room full of alphas. You know what I mean? Like, they know right away what they can get away with. Players want to be coached. They want to be told what to do. They want responsibility. that kind of thing. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that. I I don't know. This might be a me problem, but the things that the majority of people and majority of fans, find and want to make big deals out of, I find myself most cases I'm the opposite, which I don't know what that means, but I think when I watch this team now, it's more of a sitcom than anything. It's an 82 episode long sitcom. And so
Love it.
I'm not going to be freaking out over things because it's 82 games long. Things could, change at any point. Let's see how this plays out. Me getting angry and flipping out because Michkov gets benched in the third period. Who gives a fuck if I'm upset? You know what I mean? There's 30 more games. Let him sit, let him learn. What's the big deal? He's not going anywhere.
People think he is. It's sad. It's
maybe
he's
that's
ruined. He's completely ruined.
Yeah, that's so bizarre to me. That's crazy to me.
And I think it's the new generations and whatnot. It's like everybody needs to be coddled. Get out the gloves, and let's be very, very careful with what we do and how we do it and how we speak to him. And stuff that I find absolutely ridiculous, but does have some merit, as we've seen with other players. But it doesn't mean it's every player. Yeah. And everything I've seen about Michkov, if he's the type to get upset with his own players because their minds don't work the way his does, and therefore the play he wants to make and where they should be isn't matching up, that he gets a alleged bad reputation. You're telling me a guy like that's going to respond negatively to a coach having that same fire and passion? That's just silly. And I'm not saying everything Torts does is right. I do have some issues with how much time, Michkov's playing on the ice and whatnot. That's a whole nother conversation. But as far as them going at it, I am not worried at all.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on just a bit here. And I want to talk about who's next to be dealt potentially. And this kind of ties in with one of our other topics here. So obviously they're looking for a center. And we talked about how they could go about doing that, acquiring more picks, opening up cap space. It appears they're still looking for reclamation project type players, maybe guys that need a change of scenery. But who's next to be moved, do you think, Jack?
Well, I was going to say Risto, but, got to be careful. Got to hang on to him. If we wait too long, he might get hurt. No, it doesn't sound like it's all that serious. He's nicked up, but that kind of happened last year, didn't it? Went from day to day to week to month till see you next year. So look, it's not like he's on a one. So
somebody made a comment in earlier today. I won't say where or who made it, but they made a comment about his girlfriend and how it kind of made me laugh. And I do wonder if there's something there, because every year around the trade deadline, he finds a way to not get traded. And maybe there's something to that, him and Miss Hatcher or whatever. So, but yeah, no, you did bring this up on last week's episode that, what if Risto does get hurt? And my thing is, well, he's under contract for 2 more years.
Yeah. Gives him and Hatcher more time to break up, I guess. So, yeah, I don't think he's out of it. It's hard to imagine if he were to stay injured through the trade deadline. I don't think Lawton's going anywhere this deadline. They'd have to get one hell of an offer. He's going to be playing center. He's de facto captain, well-loved. You just lost 2 core pieces. You're going to want to keep a guy like Lawton around, at least for the end of this season. So I really don't see Lawton going now. Risto's still my guy. I hope he comes back strong and they figure some things out, and we'll see what they do. But yeah, not off to the best start. So we still got plenty of time. Other than that, it's tough to say because this one was so out of the blue. Both Frost and Farabee had the off-season tag. Like, it should have been an off-season move. You'd think it'd be an off-season move, and it's just in this strange deal, where there's no picks involved on the Flyers end, freeing up cap and bringing in some try-me's. And, like, the only other trade would have to be something similar like that. Like, who'd even be available besides Lawton and Risto? They're going to trade Eric Johnson. I mean, they're not going to trade. Everybody else strikes me as too young and potentially a part of the core. And if it is somebody you think you can move on from, I think it's an off-season move. So I think it's Risto or bust for me.
Okay. Yeah. You know what I'm curious about? If Risto does somehow end up being hurt up to the trade deadline, let's just say, I wonder if that puts more pressure on the Flyers to move a Scott Lawton. Like maybe he's prime candidate number one. We want to do something for him now because we're not going to get anything for Ristolainen.
Yeah, well, I tell you what would help that if this Gauthier guy that they brought up from the Phantoms, a 23-year-old, he played with the Royals. They signed him to a ELC or an NHL contract. He's up now. If he could help expedite that process, Rodrigo as well, if he keeps playing well, and who the hell else knows, whoever they have. I think a little bit of that would help. We'll see. Maybe they do get somebody back in a deal, like a center, just for the rest of the season. It feels like to be a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to both players can be moved in the offseason, so it's not like they have to move somebody at the deadline. And with Frost and Farabee, two long-standing members of the team, essentially were both what I think they both played in 2018, 19. I think Frost might have been 19, 20, but for quite a bit, 4 to 5 years, both these guys have been here. They were supposed to be a part of the new core. They were both what we got from the Shen trade, and just like that, they're gone. And that locker room is fractured. You saw, it's a little dramatic, but you saw what came out. Lawton was hanging out with them on the plane. Sanheim's, they're having their last dinner. Sanheim's emotional about it. And, it didn't really go over all that well with the team. So I can see them keeping a guy like Lawton just from that nature, because it's not going to be the end of this. More guys are going to get moved theoretically. So, maybe they're not going to get a deal they like. And they've already said, it's almost like they feel like they're trying not to trade him by having such a high ask. But if somebody meets it, will they pull the trigger? I think they have more reason now to say no.
That's good points. Yeah, good points on that. Since they already moved out some guys, maybe you don't want to move the guy who's really known as the glue and is probably the impromptu leader of the Flyers, and Scott Lawton. So that's a good point. We don't know how long Risto is going to be out. Tortorella said today that he's just nicked up. I'm not sure really what that means. Maybe he's just banged up. They said the same thing for Drysdale, and I think he ended up missing a month, So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, see what happens.
All right. So you mentioned the Flyers centers in Jacob Gauthier, Rodrigo Abels, Sean Couturier. Ryan Paling's hurt. He's still on the injured list or injured reserve, whatever that's called. And I'm sorry, who was the fourth center I missed here? Is it Scott Lawton? So the Flyers, I would say, are closer to finishing as a bottom 5 team than they are as a team that will contend for a playoff spot. And I'm curious to hear from the listeners and the viewers in the comments while Jack takes a quick break here. What do you think the Flyers are going to do here? Do you think that they're going to add somebody between now and the trade deadline to still give a push? Jack, do you think the Flyers are still going to make a push for the playoffs and maybe try to add somebody before the deadline? Or do you think that trade was sort of let's see what we got in some of the AHL guys, obviously by bringing up a guy like Gauthier, and Rodrigo Abels is up, who I'm not sure I expected him to get much NHL time this year. Do you think they're closer to being a playoff contender still this year, or do you think you can see them sliding down the standings into potentially a bottom 5 pick?
I know things have been rough as of late, and it might just seem like it's a slow go, but I truly believe that this is as clustered as the East is, and as a couple of wins can get you back into the swing of things, a couple of losses could send you in the other direction too. And they're a rebuilding team, and they just traded players off the roster and really didn't acquire much back except for, reclamation projects at best. So for me, that's pretty good for them to drop out of contention pretty swiftly And I mean, I think where do they draft in? Like, if the draft were to be today, aren't they drafting like 7th minus the lottery? I mean, that's where they got Michkov. So I mean, you drop a couple of spots, all of a sudden you're really in contention to get a really good player with your own pick. I know you can't tell the players to tank or the coach for that matter, and they're not going to, but they are going to actively make moves and do what's best for the team in the future. And this trade just proved that. It's Calgary was a team that was supposed to stink and have really turned things around. They're acquiring players to try to, give that team a little push, where the Flyers are doing the exact opposite. And they did it last year too. They were so much better last year. So there's all the more reason to go the other direction this year, especially when you consider how tough it is to get a center, where centers are going to be drafted. I mean, is it just me? But I'm starting to hear things that this draft as a whole isn't supposed to be as good as we thought it was going to be. I just heard that like this week. And I was very surprised to hear that. It's not what I was told. We were led to going in. If there's any truth to that, that's also more reason to draft as high as possible and maybe move some of those other picks. We'll see what ultimately happens. But yeah, I think they're going to, and this is what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to stick with what they have. They can move anybody that's not a part of the future. They will. And we're going to see more names that we want to see. And ultimately the result's not going to be what we like game by game, but it's what they're supposed to do to evaluate who they have. And now's the chance. There should be an influx of guys coming soon from who they've already drafted to all these freaking picks and whatever they do to bring current NHL players to the team in the offseason, whether it be this or next. So might as well see what you have, get a good draft pick in the short term. And between the draft pick, the assets, the money they freed up, I mean, everything else points to them slipping in the standings. Like, for a draft pick purposes. I want them to remain competitive, but they're not helping themselves out to remain competitive besides a few. These guys happen to, be reclamation projects, and the team that traded these players away is a team actually trying to make the playoffs. We're the other team. So that tells me they're trying to fall in the standings, and they're going to. Unless you find that somebody's really good that you had in your farm system or something like that. But just look how bad this team has been lately. Like, once the third line stopped scoring, Konechny started slipping. Yeah, I think Michkov went first. Nobody's scoring. 3 straight shutouts. Like, they got issues. Now injuries are cropping up. I see them. Writing was on the wall. I think we made the right decision, and I'll be happy when we have a nice draft pick, but it's going to be a little bit tough. And I don't see them doing much else. I don't see them helping themselves out this season either.
Yeah, so the last couple shows we talked about the Flyers' tough month of January against all the Metro opponents, and February really didn't get easier aside from the big break, the big 2-week break in the middle of February. We said if the Flyers can make it to that break, then they can pretty much figure out what they need to do at the deadline. Maybe they add or, something small. But, things weren't looking too shabby. However, they went on, they had a 2-game losing streak, and they're now on a 3-game losing streak, and all of a sudden they've lost 5 of 6. And during those 5 losses, they've been outscored 19-2. And, I think the 3-0 loss to the Islanders was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back there. The 5-0 loss to the Devils the night before. Those were big games for the Flyers. And I'm going to assume that Briere kind of saw those games and just kind of thought, it's not going to happen with the guys that we have. We're not going to make that playoff push with the players that we have. And so he made the move. And, we were saying, any sort of extended losing streak during this stretch or at any stretch this year, because there's so much parity in the Eastern Conference, you'll end up at the bottom of the standings. And that's exactly what's happened. They've lost 5 of 6, and they've gotten, quite frankly, they're embarrassed, losing games 5-0, 3-0, 2-0, 6-1, and 3-1. That they're second from last now in the Eastern Conference to only the Buffalo Sabres, who coincidentally have won 3 games in a row, while the Flyers have lost 3 in a row, and now sit just 5 points behind the Flyers with 2 games in hand. So, if they are not, we talked about potential, the big money they could spend with the cap space that's opened up. We talked about how they're accumulating draft picks. Two things that teams do during a rebuild. The third thing, which you mentioned, Jack, is they still have their own draft pick, and they've slid down the standings. They have absolutely no center depth, right? It's going to be, I guess it's fun for some fans to get to watch players like Jacob Gauthier and Rodrigo Abels. And then when this guy Kuzmenko comes over and Peltier, it's fun for fans to watch new players, I guess, even if they're not very good. But the Flyers are going to slide. And I think more than anything is what fans should be rooting for right now. Like if they were to somehow make the playoffs, they're a first round exit. So at 52 points right now, you're right. They are 4, 5, 6, 7. They're eighth, and they play Utah tomorrow night. Utah wins. They skip the Flyers. The Flyers are seventh. Anaheim Ducks are right there. The Seattle Kraken are right there. I mentioned the Buffalo Sabres. The Flyers probably don't finish bottom 3, but there is a realistic shot they finish bottom 4, bottom 5, and then who knows what happens with the lottery balls, right? Who knows?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the dream. It's the only way they're getting us. There's at least with this draft, the top end of it is pretty legit, and there's a lot of centers. So, it would be something if this team went from being in the middle of the season, kind of being on the playoff bubble, to all of a sudden they're drafting top 5, looking at a center, and then they have the ammunition and they literally make the cap space and go trade for a center. It would be like, whoa, even I'm not saying who, I have no idea, but that would really wake people up. And now all of a sudden Luchenko's like knocking on the door. It's like this thing really turned around quick. And then I'm not saying to win, I'm just saying to like the pieces are starting to come in place. So hopefully we see something like that happen.
Right. Not that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but they're almost surrounding, their goal here. It's almost going to be impossible for them to, and I'm going to knock on wood, but they have multiple plans and multiple ways to get this guy, whoever it is, right? Or maybe even 2 if things work out perfectly, right? Like you said, maybe they end up drafting their guy, and if they're drafting from like 3 to 5 or 4 to 6, there's a high likelihood that they're going to get one of these top high-end centers in this draft. Like, it's not the most talented, deepest draft, but it is somewhat top heavy, and there are a handful of very good centers in this draft that it looks like, if things play out as expected, they are going to get their hands on this summer. And that's exciting. And then you add in the possibility that they could sign a guy, right? And they can let Luchenko kind of cook a little bit. Or Luchenko comes up, and whoever they draft can take their time getting him up here. All of a sudden, there's light at the end of the tunnel here. Flyers have centers again for the first time since Mike Richards and Jeff Carter, whoever. Man, that's so long ago. But yeah, so we'll see. There's hope, I think. We just kind of have to ride out the end of the year, and yeah, we didn't really talk about a lot of Tortorella tonight. And we have about 12 minutes left, but you want to talk some Torch, Jack, because he does have 1 year left on his deal, and I'm curious what you think could happen, because I don't really see. I know when they signed Torch, I don't think the intention was ever to compete for a cup, right? So when they signed him to a 4-year deal, I'm wondering if he doesn't have any issue coaching out that 4th year. But I do wonder if there could be a negative effect of allowing him to coach out the 4th year on the players, because during that year, the players know that no matter what, this guy's not here next year. So he can do this and that all the hell he wants. I'm under contract for the next 2, 3, 4 years. He's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. We always imagined that he would just go into some kind of front office role. And I had a feeling in the back of my mind, I'm like, once he reaches that final year, is he going to want to do that? Or is he going to be like, no, I'm not done coaching yet? In which case, I think the Flyers need to play hardball. Either you do what the original plan was, or we're moving on, because his first year was obviously evaluating. It was terrible. Last year, I can't really even explain. But, the team has I don't know where this regressing comes from. It's absolutely silly. I think it's been fine. I think a lot of players have learned a lot, and a lot of little things here and there have definitely come over from the players that we want to. Like, I don't care if Lawton learns a new trick right now. I care that, Bobby Brink and Noah Cates and Forrester are like the best line on the freaking team. Like, that means a lot to me, like that kind of stuff. And he doesn't do anything with the goaltending. Konechny continues to get better, and Michkov started off real hot and was looking great. Yes, Rocky is the problem. But I don't think they should just outright. They do need to make the decision if he wants to play hardball, but I don't think they should just like fire him after this year or mutually part ways unless they have somebody else in mind. Whether look, if he is a lame duck coach in scenario one where he's going to go into the front office, like, you still have some pull there. It's like, you want to stay here? Like, because I'm still going to have some pull, so don't be dogging it. I'll see right through that crap. But if he wants to continue coaching and the Flyers are forced to make a tough decision, that could be a problem. I never imagined that being the case, but at the end of the day, maybe the guy's not done coaching. You only lived this life once, and maybe he wants to keep going. So they got to make the right decision at that point, and they really got to have people on the back burner that they're like interested in. I'd hate to lose our defensive coach, Bradshaw, because of something like that, where he's put in a scenario where he's an interim coach, then they have to let him go and bring in the next guy, and he's got to hire a whole new staff. So there's certain scenarios where we get to somehow still hang on to Bradshaw, but ultimately we'll see what happens. I don't think that Torts has done anything to warrant himself getting fired, unless you're a Twitter freakazoid. I really think he's done exactly what they've asked. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be tough. You know why? Because the team's going through rebuild. Therefore, they suck. So, ultimately, we'll see I don't know where Torts' head's at right now. I thought I understood the plan, and maybe that's not the case. So, but at the same time, is somebody available to step in, or are they just going to, wing it? Because I don't like that either. Like, let's get another college head coach. Let's go with Bradshaw. Let's go with this guy. Like, I would want it to be somebody good, a name. Honestly, I think they need some kind of a name. I don't think they should be winging it on some new guy or something like that.
Yeah, I do like Matt Carl's brother, if I could say that. I think the Flyers are heading into a period where they're, well, I guess, they're already one of the younger teams in the NHL. So I'm thinking guys like Konechny, Couturier, Sanheim will all be a little older. Tippett will be a little older. For the most part, this is going to be a team under 25 years old. And I don't think their next coach will be the coach that's going to take them to the Stanley Cup either. Yeah, there you go. David Carl. Thanks, Oakham. But so I'm thinking like, okay, they went all the way to the one side with Torts, who, while I think he's a good coach, is not a player's coach. What's the other extreme? You go out and get a guy like David Carl, who I don't know if he's a player's coach per se, but he works with younger guys. He coached the U.S. team. He coaches in Minnesota. I'm sorry, is it Minnesota? I can't remember off the top of my head there.
Their coach.
Yeah, I don't think it's Minnesota. I have to go back and look that up. I'm having a brain fart right now. Oakham, if you can bring up his college team right there for us. I think it's University of Denver, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But he would be a guy that I think could work with some of the younger Flyers on this team and maybe help them transition to their next coach when they're ready to, to get that Stanley Cup winning guy, whoever that might be. Yeah, Denver. Thanks, Sean C. But he's a guy I would have my eyes on. I'm not going to sit here and say they need him or I'm going to be angry. This is the guy. If they don't get him, I'm going to be pissed. Fire Danny. Right? I'm not there. But I think they do need to have something in place, because even though I'm a Torts guy, I'm not sure I want him coaching his fourth year. I don't think he needs to. I think whatever he wanted to come in here and establish, he has established. I don't think the roster that he has, I don't think he can do any more with the roster that he has. Does that make sense? The goalies aren't really helping them out the way that they need to be. So there's that. The special teams, which I don't think Torts has put a whole lot into the special teams while he's been here. It's mostly been 5-on-5 and changing culture. The reasons he was brought in have happened, in my opinion. And I think it's time to at least, if they're not already, which I'm sure they are, at least have a plan in place if that move needs to happen this summer, because it might need to. That's where my head is.
Well, I agree they should have a plan in place, but two things on what you said. The second part about Torts doing everything he could for this roster, I agree with that. However, this roster should be forever changing. And if they're going to start moving out guys and bringing up the younger guys, I would want Torts here for that. I do like that he beats out bad habits. I don't want him to do that for 5 years, but for some of these young guys coming into the game, making sure they play properly and do what they're supposed to do, and it doesn't wind up like the Wild West where everybody's doing their own thing and it just don't work. And the other thing you mentioned about the Denver coach, David Carl, excuse me. Everything you said sounded good, looks good. It sounded exactly why they hired Dave Haxtall, though.
It's true. No, it's true.
Exact same reasonings.
It's true.
And I seriously doubt this guy's Haxtall, because Haxtall was something else. But like the reasoning there, and it's like I almost want that coach to get some coaching experience first, and maybe come back around, and then I feel a lot better about that. But like not often do these coaches make the jump from college to the NHL, and it just works out.
No, yeah.
David Quinn's another guy that just, and I'm probably forgetting about somebody, but I'm not against it, because you're saying it's like it's not the guy to win with, but it's a guy to grow with, and but part of me likes that structure still and wants somebody in here who knows what they're doing. Because if their timeline is like 27, 28, that coach could theoretically be pushing for the playoffs and forward and whatnot. I think as Flyers fans, we're so used to like the coach being successful 3 years and the coach still gets fired after 3 years because they didn't win. So the lifespan's short. But I feel like where they're at, if they were to get somebody, it could be a while. Honestly, I've said it a million times. But the idea of Mike Sullivan, who's best friends with Torts, who may get let go this year, we'll see. You keep Brad Shaw in that scenario, really. And that is right now more appealing to me than some other options at this time.
Yeah, totally get that. Fears are valid there. While I was talking about David Carl, I was thinking about Dave Haxtall, but yeah, totally get it. We'll see what they do, but it's going to be something to keep an eye on. Because I think, and it's not that Torts has run his course, it's just that we're coming up on that time. I can't see him coaching out as, I just can't see it. I don't understand the point of it, unless it's to, hey, give us the fourth year or give us half the year until our guy, because you never know who's going to get let go, right? And so if their guy is not out there to get between now, the summer, and because coaches always get fired during the regular season. We saw Jim Montgomery get fired in Boston, was immediately hired in I think it was St. Louis. Maybe there's a scenario like that they're waiting for. Who knows? Maybe Torch does them that favor and ends up coaching out his fourth year or part of his fourth year. And we'll see how things play out. But I think they should, if they don't already, they should have a list of guys and they should be kind of, looking down that avenue, in my opinion.
Yeah, they should be prepared if the Torts is not interested in the front. Because I can see him coaching it out if he's going right to the front office in some capacity. Yep. He's like, I'm done coaching. But if that's not the case, then yes, I agree. They need to have things ready and maybe pull the trigger sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, and Boost Wholesale, I don't mean to say like he's run his course in the sense that, like you take your medicine and by, you feel a certain way by the time he's done. I don't mean it in that sense. I'm not sure what else there is for him to do here. What else is there for him to accomplish besides, if there are still young players that are going to be added to the roster for him to groom and to shape. I just don't know what else there is for him to do. Like he's a guy that will help a team and push a team to make the playoffs. this roster as is now today is not going to do that. And, you know, I don't know, maybe they assemble some sort of roster for next season and they give Torts the opportunity for one last push. But this is it for him. The 4-year contract as a coach for him is it. He's done, you know? So I don't know. You have to think about the players in this as well. When they know that the coach is done no matter what, do you know what I mean? Like,
that's an easy way for the message to get lost. I get it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I
I worry about that.
Like, what am I playing for this guy for? He's not going to be here.
Right.
But like, this is a different, and I still agree with that no matter what. But I do think these players realize that he has a lot of sway with the front office. So if you want to be here, then you probably should at least not, you know, you don't have to kill yourself for him, but they don't be an a-hole either. So
yeah,
the best case scenario is to have a foolproof plan, which is kind of tough. So hopefully they know what they want to do with that. But I always thought it was understood that after these 4 years, he was done.
Yep. And BW makes a comment. So he understands on the point about the players tuning him out. And he says, those are the players you don't keep. And I think to the point that he just made, we saw a trade just a few days ago for a couple players, or at least one, you know, that was kind of tuning him out. And I'll let you guys decide which one of those players it was. But he finished last season very weak, and he couldn't find his game this year, and he was being overpaid by about $5 million for the next 3 years, and now he's in Calgary. So, yeah, that's kind of how things go, you know. Jack, we're a little bit over an hour here. Do we miss any of our topics?
I think we hit all our topics. I just wanted to add one last thing.
Sure.
Jim, did you see Elliot Freeman? I don't know what day it was. He released what the cap will look like in the next couple of years. You know those numbers, Jim?
No, I don't know them off the top of my head. Do you have them?
If you did, that'd be impressive. In 2025, 26, which would be next year, it's going to jump to 95.5 mil. Before 26, 27, it jumps to 104 mil, almost 10 mil. And then in 27, 28, it's 113.5 mil. Jiminy crickets. It is just leapfrogging, especially next year to the following. Holy cow. Like, between the next 2 years, that's a $15 million player right there. And we're making space. We're going to have dead money coming off the cap. Eventually going to move Risto and his cap. I mean, Flyers can have like 30 mil. Go looking into free agency here. Let's go.
Yeah. Things are shaping up. You know, we've been saying it for a couple of weeks. There is a plan in place, and the moves being made, you know, kind of signal that as well, that there is a plan. And I think as a fan of the Philadelphia Flyers during a rebuild, that's all you want. You want to see a clear plan in place. And I think we're getting that. You know, you just have to kind of pay attention to what's happening. You know, you got to look ahead a little bit. That's what I think you need to do during a rebuild. So yeah, we could talk about that a little bit more on next week's show as well. We'll be another week closer to the trade deadline. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode, guys and girls. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe. Help us continue our quest for 1,000 YouTube subscribers. Like and leave a comment for us on YouTube. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Make sure you set alerts so you're first to know when we drop a new show. And for all of our latest episodes, articles, and updates, please head over to hwhockey.net. Our next post-game show will be Thursday. You know who the Flyers play on Thursday, Jack? They come home for 2 games before the break here. I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I had the schedule up.
I know.
Oh, they play the first place Washington Capitals and Alexander Ovechkin. So, yeah, the next post game will be Thursday night after the Washington Flyers game. So I'll see you guys then. But for now, I'm Jim. That's Jack. We'll be back next week. See you guys.
I'm going to that game, Jim, on Thursday. I'll see you there.
Oh, there you go. I'll see you then.
Yeah, just me and Papa Dukes.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'll see you guys there.
Booyah.
All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.